if we can give him a warm welcome and thank him for coming all the way from Winnipeg to do a presentation.
Praise not really due, but thank you. I think somebody just finally had the nerve and the arrogance to stand up and say what everybody's really thinking anyways, and do it on the internet. That's about my only claim to fame, I guess. So that and making things simple. That's my whole philosophy on this, is if the simple man can't understand it, then it's not a remedy. So, the videos were only half the story. That's the other problem, is I actually wanted to stop putting stuff out until I had a chance to put everything together so that people had the full story, both sides of the equation, what's really going on, to stop people from going into court and getting into yelling matches with the judge that they're the administrator of the legal name, because you're not. There's two different legal names, and I only talk about the one side in the videos. So we're going to talk about both sides, what's going on here, the jurisdictional issues and where people are going wrong. I mean, it's not like I'm perfect. I just spent 18 days in jail myself, but that was by choice. I refused to make application for bail at all. I just said, no, I'm here to deal with this now. I got the Crown to admit on the record on the first day in front of the judge they had no claim, no cause of action, no contract, no jurisdiction, nothing. And then the judge proceeded to keep me there and wouldn't release me anyways. So he's liable. We'll be going to civil court. He's going to get sued right along with the Crown for his actions. I really don't care. They could have kept me in there for another 8 months because I'm making more money by sitting in a chair watching satellite TV and drinking coffee than I was by actually being outside at home, right? So I don't care. I had fun with it. I've got lots of stories about that. I like to tell people, you know what, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.
Did you drop the soap?
You know what's funny about that is actually, I had my own private shower anyways, right? Like, it's not open showers for everybody. And the first time I was in there, I'm washing up, and I dropped the soap. And I started laughing. I'm like, oh man, I'm going to have to tell people I dropped the soap when I get out of here. And it broke into a couple pieces on the floor, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to use that soap now. It's touched the floor of the shower, so yeah, I was just like, oh, I left it there. Anyways, yeah, not the cleanliest of place. You got to have fun when you're doing it. And I have fun, like when I'm in jail, I'm like, yeah, whatever. And it's true. I had a whole file I like to bring and show people just so they know I'm not lying, where when I start drafting all my legal documents or any papers I'm going to write, I write them in pencil on those little golf pencils they give you in jail in the back of the requisition forms for the canteen and stuff like that, and that's what goes into the court file. So that's you make the best of it, and don't let them know that court or that jail doesn't bother you, because that's their last card they have against you is you'll go to jail. It's like, well, big deal. That's the worst you got. I can go to jail? Give me a break. I mean, if I'm not free to travel the highways and do what I want, I'm in jail already. That's just a smaller room. That's it. So I don't care. And they have to know that. They have to know you're not afraid of them. Because it's a bit of a pissing match in jail, in court. It's a battle. It's a war zone. It is. That's what courts are developed for, right? We used to have armies and go into the field and, I'm right. No, I'm right. Well, yeah, when my army beats your army, then I'll prove to you I'm right. Well, they just moved that into a courtroom. It doesn't mean we have to act civilized at all times, because it's still a war zone. They're still attacking you, right? And that's why, I'm not kidding. Sometimes when I'm in my videos and I say I'm yelling at judges sometimes, I'm doing that, but I don't recommend people do that at all, because that's just going to get you where I went for 18 days. I just don't care. So we'll go over what I started touching on in the videos, which is one side of the equation. I don't know what everybody's background is, but I already know that everybody is just mass confusion on what the name is. Still, just mass confusion. So I think that's probably where we're going to start. Again, don't take my word as law. Right? It's only law if one of you agrees with me. Then it's only law between us two, and it doesn't have any bearing on anybody else you're going to go to court against. So people have to understand what law is as well. Jurisdiction, law, the name, we're going to touch on all that right now. I'm assuming everybody's probably seen the videos. Okay. Yeah, like I say, not the most professional videos on earth, so.
They are wonderful.
Oh, thank you. That's great. Okay, what's the government doing to us? Why aren't they recognizing our rights? Why aren't we traveling the highways, unmolested by agencies of government? And what is the name? That's the most important thing. I touch on in one of the videos there where I start talking about the name. We go through it all, but we're only talking about one side of the equation in that video. I meant to get onto the other half of what's going on that I hadn't even quite perfected yet at that point, but then we never did. So everybody that's watched the videos, you're only getting one half of this story. So I'm going to draw both sides of the equation at the same time here as I'm going on to explain what happened so we can see the differences between the two. It's the same legal name, but it's a name in two different jurisdictions, is what's happening. And you are the administrator and the beneficiary of the name on the one side of the equation in jurisdiction, and they are the administrator and beneficiary of the same name in a different jurisdiction. And that's what people don't understand. They don't understand jurisdiction in court and what jurisdiction is, period. Right? So, and once again, I don't know how many times I try to tell people this. Well, we'll start with man. Okay, so man. You're born, and one of the first gifts that your parents give to you is a name. It's given to you. That's why it's even called a given name. And then you have your family name, which is your surname. And they fill out a registration form with the government. And it's something I'm also going to clear up right now. If somebody can prove me wrong on this, I'm still waiting. The challenge is out there. If somebody actually wants to send me documentation on what registration is that conflicts with what I'm going to tell you, I'm still waiting. And it's never going to show up. In their own laws, in Bouvier's Law Dictionary, you can look it up. Registration is not this nefarious thing that, oh, as soon as I register something, it's not mine anymore, right? It's the exclusive property of whoever I registered it to. That's nonsense. Just look up the word register in Bouvier's Law Dictionary. It says right in there, registration transfers no interest in property. It does not transfer an interest in property. What it is, it's a recording. It's a public record that's meant to protect your interest in that property. They're not tricking you into registering something and then saying, ha, now it's ours and you have to do what we say. Right? That's not what's going on. So we register a name. There is a trick being played, but that's not it. So they register the name, again, because you are not a name. You're recognized through a name. That's the will of government. That's the will of the legislature, is to be recognized through a name. Because I don't want to say they can't recognize a man. They can, but they recognize you through a name because a name is a title. And you can't do anything without a title. Nothing. And that's the whole point of what's going on. So your given name, once it's registered, becomes a title that they recognize you through. So we'll just say, what is it in BC? Is it a certificate of live birth? Or a statement of live birth? Yeah.
SOLB, we've been calling it.
Yeah, statement of live birth.
Statement of live birth.
Registration of a live birth.
Yeah. Yeah, either way, it's a registration, okay, so it's a public record of a live birth. That's all it is. It's not gifting you as property to the government. It's nothing nefarious or sinister. In fact, it's a good thing. You're going to want that. So let's just call it a live birth record. We don't, because down in the States it's called something different. In Manitoba it's the particulars of a live birth. I don't care. It's a document filed by the government, and the most important part about this document is who signed it. And that's one of our parents that signed this. Right? That's the important part about this document. Nothing else on that document is important except for whose signature is on it. We'll say live birth record. We'll just call that line jurisdiction. So we got the live birth record. And on this live birth record is the signature of one of our parents. And that's very important because that means that our parents created that by their signature. So that's a creation of theirs that gave us a title, a name to be recognized through. So let's start with the points, the difference between the document. So a live birth record is created by our parents. We'll say created by, and in fact, you can say it's created by you, created by us. Because your parent is just acting as your guardian. They're doing it for you because you're a little baby. They have to feed you as well, right? You're You know, I hate it when people say that, you know, I was born a sovereign. No, you weren't. Did you feed yourself? Did you go crawl around and find, you know, bugs to eat? No, you're not. Someone had to look after you when you were born. You had a guardian. So it was created by us. Then something else happened. And this is why I went wrong for a lot of years as well. We get this other document in the mail. And it's called birth certificate. Or certificate of birth. And look, it's got all the same information on it, you know. Oh yeah, that's my name. The registration date's the same. Everything's all the same. It must be a receipt for that document. And that's a presumption I went off for probably a better part of 10 years. And I did, and I even tell people, never operate on presumptions. And when you operate off somebody else's work, you should always question their work, right? Instead of just saying, okay, well, this person came to this conclusion, so then I'm going to come to a different conclusion based, you know, working off somebody else's work just perpetuates myths and all the other nonsense that's out there. And that's why we're in such the mess we are. So I thought the same thing. Okay, well, this is my receipt. Oh, yeah, you know, bill of lading, UCC. We went through all that crap. And that's what it is. It's just crap. That's nonsense. It makes absolutely no sense. This is not a receipt for that. It is linked to it, but not in the way we think it is. It's not a receipt for it. If it was, they would just send us a shrink copy of that document. So clearly something else is going on. And the other problem is, this is a live birth record, and that one just says certificate of birth. If it was an extract of that document, it would say certificate of live birth. It doesn't. The titles are different. That's very important. So we're going to call it birth certificate over here. And actually above it I'll write something else. And again, so the name. I don't care if it's spelled in all capital letters. I don't care if it's spelled upper and lowercase. I don't care if it's spelled all lowercase. I don't care if it's spelled in hieroglyphics. I don't care if it's spelled in runic symbols. That means nothing. It's a name you're recognized through. End of story. That's it. Makes no difference if it's spelled, oh, well, no, my name's spelled, you know, Dean is spelled uppercase D, lowercase, you know, E-A-N, and this is all uppercase Dean, so, nope, your crap doesn't apply to me. Like, oh, the wrong argument's being made in court. So, on both sides of the equation here, I'm just going to write. Dean Clifford, Dean Clifford. Except I'm going to start.
You can erase that stuff.
Oh, okay, we're done with that now? Do we have an eraser? This. Shake here. Again, same name, same information. Two different documents. And the most important part about this document is whose signature is on it? Government's. He who creates, owns. It's clearly something created by the government. And I'm going to think here for a second before I go on, because haven't perfected explaining this to people yet, but so we'll just go on with the differences between the document and what's really going on here. So, and we've got to explain title, I think, at this point. We'll just leave it with this for now. We know they both have the same name on it, except obviously one says given names and then surname, given or Christian name. Either way, it's a name you're recognized through. It's the same name as on the birth certificate. People have to understand the concept of title and what a title is and what creates a trust. Okay? Everything is done by title. I mean, that goes back to the time of kings and queens and all that kind of stuff. What was your title? Your title is your status. What's your status in society? And that's very important, especially once you get into trust law as well, because now do people know what creates a trust? Right? Yeah, when something is granted. And more specifically, what happens is when you have title to a piece of property, and there's two titles to property. There's legal title and there's equitable title. A trust is created when those titles are split. And one party is sent one title and another party retains the other title. So that means when legal title is sent to one party, they become the trustee of that legal title. And whoever is the equitable title holder remains the equitable title holder, and that's who the beneficiary of the trust is. That's how trust law works. So those videos were absolutely correct on trust law. The problem was I was only ever talking about this side right here because I was trying to get people to understand who they are and why they have so much power and value attached to them. So, when your parents sent in this document with their signature, the original, this is the legal title to the name you were granted by your parents. This was sent to the government. That made them the trustee of this legal title and created a trust. And this is the evidence of that trust. Okay? You always were the equitable title holder of that trust. And that's why you're the beneficiary over here. Okay? So the legal title was split. Sorry, the title was split. Correct that right away. Government got the legal title. They still earned possession of it. And what that does, that gave them the right of use of the name. And there's other words I haven't brought up yet in any of the meetings I've been talking with people. If you guys want a real interesting word to go up and look in a dictionary, go look up usufruct. And who the usufruct and who the usufructuary is. Right? So what you've done is you've granted the government permission or the right of usufruct to the name. U-S-U-R-F-R-U-C-T, I think. Usufruct. I think I put an extra R in there. USU, there you go. So, and it's even funny the way it sounds too, because if you don't understand usufruct. So, that's the only quasi swear you guys will get out of me today, I think.
Oh, come on.
I promised to drop a couple bombs later, don't worry. I always start to get a little bit more worked up and passionate, even though I promised I wouldn't today. So that's not really important. It's a concept, but you should probably read it just for shits and giggles there to understand the mindset of the people that we're dealing with, right? And I have it on pretty good authority. They don't like it when you start talking about usufruct and who's usufructuary of the name when you go into court, for a very good reason. So, and that's just a right of use of something, right? So our birthright is recognized through this document. It's not secured by it. Again, it's just evidence of something, right? We were born in this land. That's our birthright. We have a claim to the land, the resources. It's all ours. And we granted legal title of our claim to the government to use, to administrate everything, to do everything that they do that they're supposed to do for our benefit. So we know that already. Right? So,
We were not born here.
what's that?
What if we were not born here?
That's where things get a little bit more complicated, and I haven't got there yet because I actually was born here. I haven't gotten into the problem of solving what to do for people that weren't born here.
We can cover that one later.
We could probably cover that one later and try to reverse engineer what happens there as well. Again, everybody has to realize that we've been doing this all by reverse engineering what we're left with in the end. And that's sometimes the hardest thing you could possibly do is to then, oh, well, why does this work? You know, and ooh, you get a shock. Nope, don't do that again. And that explains the common law movement for the last 15 years. Okay, so on this side of the equation, because it was created by us, we are the beneficiary of what was created. On this side of the equation, now we're going to bounce back. No, we'll wait to bounce back and forth here. We're just going to keep going with this one over here. So we sent them the legal title to the evidence of our estate, if you want to call it that. And I'm not saying it is an estate. I'm not saying it is a trust. It's evidence of something. Then you can go on to define whatever you want to call it from there. An evidence and a trust are basically, an estate and a trust are almost the same thing. There's differences. There's different kinds of trusts and there's different types of estates, but just generally speaking, so everybody understands, just has the big picture here, what's going on, I just refer to it as a trust or an estate, just broadly, in its most broad and vague terms. So we're the beneficiary of it, and it has our birthright attached to it, or it's evidence of it. Okay. And what's our birthright? Our birthright as a man is
Live free, unmolested.
our common law rights, right? Inherent freedoms, inherent rights. I love the word inherent because that's one of the jurisdictions of the courts, is inherent law. So let's just call it inherent rights over here. God-given, inherent, natural, common law rights. They're pretty much synonymous terms. Inherent rights. One of those rights is to conduct commerce. Period. I even had a recent argument with somebody on this because the belief is still out there that government, by some act of magic, simply has jurisdiction over all commerce everywhere at all times. Sorry, that is incorrect. Absolutely, because it's a right. It's a right to be able to conduct business, your own business. And that's what it is, it's your own business. Anytime you're doing it, I don't care if you're out in the roads, I don't care if you have a store somewhere and you have the public coming in, that's still your own private business. Unless you get a business license, of course. Then that changes a little bit. So I'm still going to put business commerce down here. You still have the right to do that. So, live birth record is evidence of a name that was given to us to be recognized through, that was created by us for that purpose, which we're the beneficiary of by birthright, with inherent rights and freedoms to conduct commerce, business, do whatever we want, live free. Hallelujah. So what's going wrong? We get this guy in the middle. And we know, okay, well, it's got their signature on it. So it's something created by them. It's not a good or a bad thing. It's just a thing. It's just a... And in fact, it says usually right on it, doesn't it say it's a certified extract from registration of birth record at the Parliament. What does it not say?
Live.
It doesn't say that it's an extract of a registration from a live birth record at the Parliament. They leave that up to draw our own conclusions and make incorrect presumptions and whatnot, right? And even if it was, even if they did create it from that document, it's still not the same as that document, which means it's something new and it's something different. And it is. So created by them. I dropped the cap, that's okay. If the government is the trustee of the document that we sent them, and we're the beneficiary, what does that mean for the document they sent us back and told us to put in a safe place and never use as ID? It's got their signature on it, and they sent it to us. We're trustees of that document, if you want to explain it in terms of trust law. And if we're the trustees of the document they sent us because they created something new and they split title, who's the beneficiary? They are. And there's two different ways to explain what the birth certificate is. I'm going to go over them both, which actually mean the same thing anyways. But there's just two different ways of saying it. Beneficiary is government. Okay, so the beneficiary of that instrument is the government. Okay, so that's why we're going to start getting into the opposing jurisdictions of what these two documents are. The birth certificate, because it's a creation of government, and government is entirely statutory in nature, does it have a birthright or rights? No, it has benefits and privileges. given to it by the government. You know, Mr. Clifford, it's a privilege to be driving on the highways. Oh, is it? Only to that guy. So, instead of inherent rights, this has statutory rights. Or legal rights. We'll just stick with statutory, though. And once again, they both have the right to conduct business and commerce. So there is similarities and there's not similarities. The problem here is that both these, it's the same name, different jurisdictions. And that's where the title comes important. That's where title becomes so important, because how many members of the government have different titles? This is the minister. You know, this man is the minister of this, and the minister of this. Those are all different titles. Okay, can the minister of transportation pass stuff for regarding the health, the Department of Health, when he's acting through that title? No. Because that's a different jurisdiction. He can only do that when he's acting through the title that statute is underneath. Different titles that they're acting through. Same man, right? That's why you can't go into court and say, I'm a man. They're like, yes, you are. We're all men here, except for that woman over there. What's your point? Your laws don't apply to me because I'm a man. Well, of course they don't apply to a man. They apply to the title that you're acting through. Okay? And you're always liable when you're the one when you're acting and doing something through a title and you do something that's not granted to you by that title. Right? That means you're breaking the law. You're doing something that you can't do through that title. Don't need this line right here as well. Sure, I can explain that better, but I think you get the idea of that. So, and this where it gets me into what I lovingly like to call right now, because it's a good way of explaining it, the Braveheart philosophy. We went over that last night, and it helps for people to understand, a little bit better. Oh, okay, I see what's going on. So, when was the last time everybody watched Braveheart?
2 days ago.
Wonderful. So you're really going to get this one then. And this might end up being on the website with a picture of Mel Gibson, where I put Mel Gibson, nutter or genius. And I'm just going to circle genius and go, damn, that guy knew what was going on. He was trying to tell us, and that's why he got ostracized from Hollywood, probably. So they like to tell stuff in movies, don't they? Okay, so the Scottish are pissed off because the English are coming through and taking all their money and forcing them to do stuff they don't want to do and raping their wives and doing all sorts of stuff that just men don't normally like being done to their families. So they get pissed off, the revolt starts, the revolution happens, they're tired, they want their rights to be respected and recognized again. Then the armies march on one another, Longshanks sends up his armies, and all the Scots and the Scottish nobles march down there, and they're all squaring off against a field. And the representative Longshanks comes riding out, right? And then the nobles ride out to, let's talk about this. Let's try to negotiate something here. We don't really want to fight, and no one wants to die. Dying's not a good thing, for the most part. Sorry, I need a drink of water. And the guy rides out, and he says, look, he goes, we don't want to fight. This is the representative of Longshanks. So take your army, and just leave, just go home. Let's just forget this all ever happened. And in exchange for this, the king will grant you titles and estates in York and blah, 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 from which you will pay an annual tax for the use of that title. of X amount per year. You have to pay a tax for using that title because it was granted to you by somebody else. And that's when, of course, Wallace rides up, I have an offer for you. No, fuck off. Take your army, you march the other way, and we'll let you live. That's my counteroffer. And if you don't, every one of you will die here today. And of course, then the battle happens, because obviously they couldn't reach a peaceful conflict resolution at that particular moment. So, and then later on in the movie, my favorite scene, I'm probably going to wind up putting that on the internet too, where he's talking to one of the nobles there. I think the guy ends up being the King of Scotland there, and he's telling him, he's like, look, he goes, we have this birthright. It's ours. This belongs to us. And he's saying, like, for Christ's sakes, he's like, help yourselves. Like, don't just take what's yours. Robert de Bruce. There you go. All right? And that's what he's trying to tell us. Look, you got this birthright. Take it. It's yours. And you owe nothing to anybody when you're using your birthright. And that's a title. Your birthright is a title. And this is evidence of that title right here. So if they would have just taken their own country and did what he said and fought with him, they would have had their own country that they would owe taxes to nobody and not be under the thumb of anybody else. And of course they screwed him over and took the titles that had liabilities attached to it and were stuck paying taxes and all that kind of shit until they finally did actually, I think, separate later anyways. So, very important concept. Because again, now we get back to who created what. Okay? If I built my own car from scratch, or even if I just bought all the parts and I just built my own car and I'm going to go around and drive it, whose permission do I need and who do I have to pay for the use of that car that I built? Nobody. I built it. It's mine. The only person I owe is myself. What am I going to do? No, thanks. Pay myself $100 for using it? No, it's mine. It's my right. So, I don't have a car. I do, but pretend I don't have a car. But my friend built one. I said, hey, you know what? I don't have a car and I got to go to work. Can you loan me the car? Can I use your car because I don't have a car? He says, yeah, no problem. How does $1 a kilometer sound? It's his car. He can either give it to me to use for free, or he can charge me per kilometer. He can just say, oh yeah, just put gas in it, or just give me $50. It's his. He dictates the terms of my use of his property. And if I don't like those terms, then I can walk to work that day. Okay? So, that'd probably be a pretty good word for a tax, eh? Well, you can use my car. I'll give it to you, but I'm going to tax you for its use. Sounds fair.
Now they call it a taxi?
Very likely. Actually, I don't know if I've ever taken a taxi. But actually, that's a very excellent point. That's probably actually very relevant. They're taxing you for its use.
And tribute's another one with taxes associated with it, right? Tribute and tax?
It is tribute. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Well, I guess that depends on who Caesar is. I said that to a judge. Because he actually told me, he said, we're not here to do the Lord's work today, we're here to do Caesar's. And I said, I couldn't agree more. I guess now, who's Caesar?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, it's something I bring up to I know a lot of Christian people who say, well, you got to pay taxes, but they don't read their Bible right. It's actually real quick. There's a story about where Peter was to get the whole point out of the fish's mouth. Right before that, actually, Jesus says, Peter, to whom do the sons of the kings pay tribute? And Peter says, to no one, Lord, they're sons of the kings. He says, therefore are the children free.
Keep that in mind. Only the foreigners pay taxes. The king's children do not pay taxes. That's another very valid point. And also you can get into, well, if we're supposed to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, that brings into question what is Caesar's. And since Caesar has created nothing, because everything on this earth belongs to God, Caesar's owed nothing.
And the Jews wouldn't pay. That was their big problem.
Exactly. So, anyways, that's neither here nor there, but keep that in mind in a few minutes here when I get on to that. So, we're starting to kind of get the idea here what's going on. We've got two different things going on here. We've got government on this side over here. Because government's a business. It's a foreign corporation. Charter and Rights and Freedoms is the first part, is the short form of the Constitution Act, which is Schedule B to the Canada Act, UK, 1982. That's where it was passed. It was passed in the United Kingdom in 1982. It's called the Canada Act. It's not an act of the legislature of the Government of Canada at all. It's above Canada. It created Canada. It's a charter that created the vessel of Canada. Period. And all the Canada Act 1982 was the act to rename the BNA Act of 1867. And it says right in there, we're just renaming it and making the language a little more modern, but the original BNA is still the superior document. It's right in there. Read it. They're not hiding nothing. So, government's a corporation. We know that. It's a business. They do provide a very, very good function for us. And we don't want to be scared of them. We just want to start using them the way they're supposed to be used. That's why registration is a good thing. It's actually a public record of an event that protects your rights. So someone can't come out to my farm with five of his buddies and guns, say, "Get out of here! It's my farm now." You know, then I just go, oh, someone just stole my farm. No, that doesn't happen anymore because governments are meant to keep records of who owns what to protect their rights. And that's why nothing can be taken from you without due process of law. And that's when the records can be changed to show somebody else is the owner. So records are a good thing. They're not forfeiting equity in the property. They might be forfeiting legal title. That's fine. I don't care about legal title. If somebody else is holding legal title in trust for my protection and my benefit, that's great because they're now liable if something happens and I lose that. They're the liable party. It's a great thing. We just have to finally understand what's going on here. So, government's a regulatory body. They regulate everything here on the lands. They don't exist. They only exist in the waterways. And who cares? What relevance does that have to anything anyways in the real world? You're going to walk into court and say, well, Canada's a ship on the seas of commerce and they only exist on the water, so I don't have to do what you tell me to do. Okay, see you in jail. That's where you're going to go. That's a pointless argument. It has no relevance in life. So, going beyond that, because, okay, it turns out government is a good thing, and that's why they charge taxes on things that are sold. Excise taxes, sales taxes, that kind of stuff. We won't get into that stuff. But they do charge like importing and exporting tariffs and other things that are meant to pay for what the service the government provides after their administration and whatnot, right? And then with a profit margin after that. We'll get into that. So the government has certain rules it has to follow. That's the point of the charter, and then the point of all their statutes. It's rules the government has to follow, and agents of the government, so that they don't harm us. And they're very, very precise and explicit about that, because damaging us, they're liable for damages they cause us when we're over here. So they have a whole bunch of rules in place, like don't speed because you might injure one of these guys, and then we're liable. So as long as you're doing under this speed limit, you're fine. All the other statutes they pass are all ever intended to be followed by agents of the government. Period. Now, I've got the case law to support that. It's in no uncertain terms. I think it's 2.5 lines long. I could not explain it more precisely and clearly than one of the judges did. It's not even a point that's open for debate. I think everybody knows that. Government rules only apply to the government. Har versus Dell, 2005. The Charter does not apply to interactions between private citizens except where the private citizen acts as an agent of the state or is performing a government function. Period. It just makes sense. So, among one of our many, many birthrights, this is where it gets good. We have the right, because we were born here and we allow the government to operate here, we have the right to work for the government if we want to be an agent of the government. So they gave us that. They said, okay, one of your birthrights, and now that we know that you have a birthright on file, we're going to create a government agent identity for you that you can work as an agent of the government if you want to. Everybody needs to earn a living. Everybody needs to earn a living. So that's what they did. They sent us that in the mail and said, you're certified, just because you were born on this land, you're certified to work for us. It's a birth certificate, right? I have a diploma at home. I graduated high school. Apparently I'm now certified to do something. The qualifications for being an agent of the government are somewhat more lax. It includes being born here. That's a right. Because we allow them to do business here and conduct their affairs on our land and control the resources that they're supposed to be benefiting us. So they allow us to, don't allow us, it's a right that we then can act as an agent of that government and be paid for our services. So you could call it a license, I don't call it a license. It's a title that you can act through. Same thing. I can be the same man can be the Minister of Finance or the Minister of this or the Minister of that. Those are all titles that they act through. And when they're acting through that title, they can do certain things. And they cannot do certain things. It all depends on what the title represents. And that's all that's going on here. We've got two titles. We've got one title over here that's recorded with the government. And through that title, we have all these rights, inherent birthrights afforded to us by our Creator. And that's simply the document that is a record of you being born here, and the government is there because they're the trustees of that document. They're actually the ones that are supposed to be protecting that birthright. That's the whole point of them being here. But shortly after we filed that, our parents filed it for us, we disappeared. They've never heard from us ever again. It's just an abandoned claim that they have legal title to and can use all the value attached to that title for profit, for gain, control the resources, everything. And we never showed up again. It's like being born into a family where you're the heir to a billionaire's fortune, and you just leave and go away and never come back. Now, don't misconstrue that. I'm not trying to say there's an account somewhere where you're going to be able to access billions of dollars. And that's something else I'd like to clarify before I even normally speak to people. There's no accounts in your name with billions of dollars in it. I don't know where this shit comes from. I think half the time it's agents of the government that get on the internet and promise you, oh yeah, file all these documents and you'll get access to a treasury account that's got billions of dollars, and then we go off chasing that. Oh man, oh, I'm greedy. I want millions and billions of dollars for nothing. Okay? That's a debtor mentality. That's somebody who wants benefits for nothing. It doesn't exist. You are owed, and there are accounts, but they're not your accounts. You can't access them, and they are required to pay you something, but it is not billions. It's not even millions. But how many people out here would have a much better life already if, say, the government sent them a check for $50,000 a year? Sounds pretty good to me. That's 2.5 times what you'd make at a minimum wage job. Okay? I'm not saying that's what it is. I'll get to that eventually as well. But the concept is, we disappeared and we never came back. What we are still in possession of is this over here. And we've been running around all over the place doing all sorts of stuff with that guy. We've been operating through that title. It even said, don't use this as ID. What's the first thing we did with it? When you use it ID to get benefits and privileges. Where we already had existing Inherent rights. Oh, goody, I want benefits and privileges. I don't care about my rights. I want $5 when I was actually owed 100 by right. It's kind of like what happened to the Indians, eh? Instead of giving you your land back and paying you all that money we were supposed to pay you from 400 years ago, how about a welfare check? Okay. So, they sent us this title. Whether it was fraudulent or not, and it is, it's security, and it was sent to us by regular mail, which is fraudulent presentment of a security instrument. But then we accepted it. So it's not fraud, because we started using it. We did exactly what they told us not to. And when you start using a name that's not yours, you accept all liabilities attached to it. And what would those liabilities be? Taxes. Taxes for using somebody else's car. And they tell you how much it's going to cost you for using it. They're called statutes. Yeah, Frank, no problem. I'll loan you my car, but if you drive over 50, I'm going to give you a bill for $50. Because I don't want you taking my car over 50 kilometers an hour. It's my car. I created it. I'm going to let you use it. And when you use it, you're going to obey my rules because you're in my house now. So that's all that's going on. It's nothing nefarious, nothing sinister, and it doesn't get more simple or complicated than that. Actually, it does get more simple, but it doesn't get more complicated than that. You can make it complicated. I could probably draw a chart on here that would fill this wall explaining more of this, but what's the point? This is actually what's going on, right? But the problem is, and this is my philosophy on this, is even though we have, okay, so you go out and you use this ID, you use it as ID, it's not, it's a record of an event. You have the legal title to it, so you can go and use that legal title to get things and do things. The same way the government's using our legal title to allow corporations to go and rape all the resources off the planet for free. Okay? They were told not to do that. So that's where some of our remedy starts to come in. But either way, that's what we're just doing what they're doing. Same thing. Government mirrors us. As is above, so is below. It's a mirror. It's a reflection. Government does everything that we do. We get the government that we deserve. You know, all these people are protesting down at Toronto, and in Wall Street too, bitching at the government, Wall Street, for giving us what we asked for. I almost can't blame the government for going in and kicking these people in the teeth. Saying, you've been demanding these things from us for 100 years, and we gave it to you. And now you're pissed off that we did it. What do you want? What the hell's wrong with you? We do look stupid. It's not our fault, though. We're ignorant, right? That's kind of the purpose of my tour, is the war against ignorance, I guess we'll call it. And I was there myself. So we go and get a driver's license. You can only get a driver's license by producing this, the title that the government gave you. Because over here, you wouldn't need one. We go and get a SIN number, and then go and start working for somebody. And the SIN number you can only get by having one of these. It's attached to this. So as soon as you put that SIN number on an employer ID form, you've just identified who's working. It's not the social insurance number that taxes you. The social insurance number is evidence that you're operating through this title. And they can tax this title. That's all they're doing. They're taxing the name. When people think they're paying property taxes on the land, no. You're paying for this title's use of the land. It's always attached to the name. So, you get pulled over and you produce a driver's license. License registration, please. And you pass it over. Yep, okay. Driver's license attached to this title. It's statutory. It must pay taxes. Now, I don't think there's any point in explaining further what I mean by this. I'm guessing that's pretty clear now? Terrifyingly clear and simple? To the point of Are you kidding me? That's all it's been so far. We left and never came back and decided to live our lives as an agent of the government. Not very smart, because they don't pay well. And I don't like them. In fact, they don't pay at all. And that's partly where our remedy comes from. Okay? Can you be forced to work for free? No. You can work for free if it's consensual. And so far it's been consensual. Have you ever sent the government, not even a fee schedule, how about negotiate an hourly rate if you're going to work for the government? Say, this is what I charge. And by right, I can charge whatever I want. And if you don't like my rates, then I guess I don't work for you, do I? Okay? Point is, the government can never prove that you acted as an agent of the government, performed a function of government, or that they paid you to do that. Ever. So that's why I got into, in some of the videos, I started talking about, okay, well, when we go to court and the Crown's charged us with something, I send a letter saying, well, exactly when did I perform a function of government? What was I being paid? What function of government was I performing? If you can't prove even just those 3 questions, then you can't prove I was acting through this title. And if I wasn't acting through that title, you can't tax me. I'm non-taxable. You're only taxable over here. And they can never prove you were acting through that title. They need you to do it or to not rebut their claim. So then it stands. But I think there's a case law surrounding Section 21 of the Canada Evidence Act stating that the burden is on the Crown to prove all this stuff. All of it. Especially if you say, well, hey, if we know what's going on now we can say, well, hey, wait a minute. At the time of the complaint, when this officer says I was speeding, was I acting as an agent of the Crown? Because I don't remember getting paid. So if you're claiming I worked for the Crown that day, I need you to let me know how many hours I worked. Because unless you can provide a contract where I agreed to work for $7 an hour, my going rate is $1 million an hour. Unless you can prove otherwise. Otherwise, you're welcome to just admit I wasn't acting as an agent of the government, and then I won't send you a bill for $1 million for the 1 hour you're claiming I worked. If I only work a minimum of an hour, even if it's 1 second, I'd bill out for an hour. I'm a contractor, we do that kind of thing. All sorts of arguments you can bring up with the Crown now before you go to court. Wonderful arguments. So that is the gist of what's going on. And I like to explain it in terms of this. You got this birthright over here, because everybody likes the vessels in commerce explanation of things. We're all vessels in commerce and agents in commerce and stuff like that. So if we want to take it into that explanation, when you were born, it was black to signify death, and that's how they gained jurisdiction over you. No. You were born, your parents were master craftsmen, and they built you a battleship. Thank you. That's my expert art abilities. If my brother was here, he could actually draw a battleship with this marker that would look more real than a real battleship. He got all the skills on that end. I got the good looks and the brains.
He must know me, but
I'm humble too. Yeah. Nice. So they birthed you a battleship to go out there and do whatever you want. No one can mess with this because it's the mightiest thing that ever sailed the seas. And no one is going to mess with you because you have rights. This thing is just all your rights out on the vessels of commerce. Then the government came along and said, okay, well, we'll let you work for us because we're regulating all the resources here. We need people to work for us and act as agents for us, and we'll pay you to do it. And we'll even create an identity for you, a title to act through when you do it. It's your birthright. But then you have to follow all the rules when you're acting through that title, which only makes sense. When you're acting through a title, you have to do everything that that title allows you to do, and you can't do anything that title doesn't allow you to do, or you get taxed. And we want taxes. Taxes are great. I love taxes. I'm not kidding. I think every single one of you should go out and work your asses off and pay all the taxes the government's going to send you a bill for. Because they're owed to me on this side. That's what the government's doing. They're supposed to be collecting taxes, revenue, to pay the people who own the equitable title to the land. They owe it to the beneficiaries. Which is comical. They're taxing us to pay us. And they're taking an administration fee for doing it. Isn't that nice? Anyways, so they gave us a vessel in commerce too. There's my paddle. That's the first thing I lost. Believe me, at about day 17 in jail, I was like, man, I am up it without a paddle right now. So there's the explanation in terms of commercial vessels for the people that are going to be watching these videos online that like the commercial approach to things. Oh, they're all vessels sailing the seas of commerce. Okay, sure, I can go with that explanation too. Different ways of explaining the same thing. Except over here, my parents gave me a battleship. That no one can just come up and, we're coming aboard, we're going to steal all your property on the battleship, whatever you're transporting. No, you're not, dude. Don't you see this gun? I'm going to blow you out of the water because this gun represents my rights. And then the government came along and said, okay, well, we got an idea. Come and work for us and we'll give you a canoe. But it is amusing. I mean, when you're in jail, you muster up for dinner. They use all sailing terms there. It's all done military. You know, Clifford, comma, Dean. Muster up for dinner. And then they go and they walk you right through the door. It says Sallyport. To go eat. So yeah, this stuff all does have its basis in commercial admiralty law. There's no question. Do we need to know commercial admiralty law to understand any of this? No, we don't. Because as long as we show up and we claim what is ours, for Christ's sakes, help yourselves. Claim what is yours. You don't need to know all that other bullshit. That's their stuff. That's trustee law. I don't care about trustee law. That's for trustees. That's for the government. I don't care who you're taxing. Just make sure I get my share of the profits. And they're not profits, right? It's earnings off of all our resources being squandered and the use of our land and stuff that's ours by birthright. We're letting them use it, but they're supposed to be paying us for it. And they haven't been because we disappeared and never came back. And went paddling around on a stupid canoe they could tax every time you drop your paddle. That's it. That's what's going on. Any questions about that?
It's kind of funny that anytime we watch a movie on the military, their protocol is that you have to ask permission to come on board their ship.
Yep. We have permission to come on board their ship. It's right here. They gave it to us in the mail.
Yeah, they ask permission to come on our stuff.
They never knowingly trespass on us because we don't even know who they are. They're not obligated to tell us we're owed anything or who we are. That's the beauty of it. I'm not obligated to tell. You know, as a contractor, would I be a good businessman if I drew up a contract with somebody? I'm going to build you a house. I'm going to charge you this much money, and this is what I'm going to do for the work. And you read it all, and you go, yeah, okay, I'm pretty good with that. And you're about to sign, and the person's about to sign it, my customer, and I say, whoa, hang on a sec there. Before you sign that, I just want you to know I am completely screwing you over in this deal. Go ahead and sign. I just felt obligated to tell you that if you sign that, you're a moron. But go ahead. There, yeah, that would be full disclosure. Wouldn't be a very good businessman if I did that. No, I don't screw anybody over, right? My contracts are always on the level, but that's what that has the effect of. They're not obligated to tell you you're being screwed over. Why would they be? See a hand.
When you were asking, or when you were mentioning about them having to prove that you were working for them as an agent, I guess if you get pulled over for something and you give them your license, that's the proof right there, is it not?
It creates a presumption, right? The presumption is you're acting as an agent to the government because you just produce government ID.
So then if you get a ticket and you discuss with Crown and say you're going to have to prove that I was working for you as an agent, can they not just say, well, you handed over your get out of jail free card?
They could say that, of course. And that's when I would say, well, okay, just because I have a license to do something, does that mean I was operating under it at the time? Can a cop go to a restaurant with his family when he's off duty and pull out his badge and operate through that badge? No, he's not on duty. That has no force effect. He's just a man. He's not at work under that title. Right? Just because I have permission to do something doesn't mean I'm doing it at that time. Just because they ask for a license, oh yeah, I got one of those. Oh, okay. If I wanted to act in that capacity, which I'm not, I have one, here it is.
But they presume you do, because they very quickly take down your
Everything,
license number.
everything after that is just a presumption that you were operating under that title that obligates you to obey all the statutes attached to it. But we never make that argument. We show up in court saying, I'm a man, I don't have to pay that. You know? And the judge just goes, oh, geez, another one of you guys.
You were also in one of their government
Okay, I'll
vehicles,
get to that.
too, though. It's the vehicle's licensed,
It's not a government vehicle.
but it's got title.
Of course. I registered it. I sent them legal title, and I kept equitable title. That's another trust arrangement. They're actually trustee. They're supposed to protect my interest in that property. I can use my property all I want. That's my right. Now, you license it, and you give it the ability to perform a function of government and carry on commerce through the agent name. Does that mean you're doing it at the time of the complaint?
It doesn't mean that, but it's what judge is going to side with you with that argument.
I don't care about a judge siding with me. The Crown's going to agree with me that I'm not performing a function of government because they're not going to provide any facts or evidence to the contrary. My claim stands. I don't give a shit what that guy on the bench says. And I tell them that. Mr. Clifford, it's my opinion that the Criminal Code of Canada applies to you in this matter. Say, well, that's your opinion, and as soon as you can provide me one law or one fact or piece of evidence that compels me to give a shit about your opinion, is when I'll care about your opinion. That was the conversation. That's the conversation I had with the last federal judge I went in front of. Seriously, what do I care about his opinion? He's there to say, did your adversary respond to you? They did not reply. We have agreement of the parties. I was not performing a function of government at the time of the complaint. They have no facts or evidence to support that. Dismiss. Motion to dismiss everything right now. I don't care what the judge's opinion is. If you believe him, that's fine. You know, that's. And I'm not talking like that to be like derogatory or belittling or anything like that. It's usually how I get my point across when I'm talking to people.
Could there be a difference if you, I mean, I got pulled over one time and didn't have my license on me, and I thought the guy was going to say, okay, well, come with me then. But as a matter of fact, that happened more than once to me, and they let me go both times. Is it possible that there's something in that if you don't carry your license, then you're actually
Of course.
free?
Well, let me ask you a question. Everybody carries around their birth certificate and pulls it out every time they're asked for ID for any reason. And it's not ID, it's just a record of something to be recognized through.
Mhm.
What would be another really good idea to do? Or,
Statement of birth.
why recreate the wheel? Everybody's out there trying to create wills and estates and a new entity and all this. I've got these letters patent, and here's a 400-page document the Attorney General for the province didn't reply to, so he's recognized I've got this new whatever and all this crap. You know what? I got a better idea. You've already got a document that is recognized by the government. You didn't force them to recognize it. You didn't get it by way of non-response. It's even got their stamp on it.
But it's not convenient, I need a bigger pocket.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah. Well, this one's bigger, so I just take the smaller one with me.
So how do you get your live birth
Okay, hang on.
record back?
You don't want you'll never get the original back. Now, sorry, there's actually one, you did have your hand up a minute ago.
Well, I'm just going to point out the BC driver's license on the back of it says this card remains the property of the issuing party.
Yeah, of course, it's
So
their.
It's not yours.
Of course not. It's their creation.
This is your license because I know.
That's just it. Well, I've made that argument too. Well, I carry this around with me, but it's not mine. It's my understanding it's the property of the province. Would you like it back? There you go. I don't care. I don't need it anyways. I don't even know why they sent it to me.
I returned it to them and I tell them that I don't want to contract with them anymore, and since 3 years without that one.
Yep. Well, you don't have to. You could just put the driver's license away in a cupboard and never use it ever again, right? It's just a tool. It's just.
Actually said you have to surrender it.
Yeah.
So once you surrender it, you no longer license.
Then it's gone. And the reason for that is when you surrender it, again, the driver's license is just legal title to something that was another new thing that was created, right? It's all linked through the birth certificate. Now, anytime you split title and a trust is created, because one party has the legal title and the other has the equitable title, how do you collapse that trust?
Go with your beneficiary status.
Put the titles back together. Return the legal title to the beneficiary title holder. There's no more trust. That's what collapses it. So when you surrender the title to something to whoever created it, you collapse that. There's no trust anymore. So you have the option of just saying this back and saying, nah, you know what, I'm never going to perform business as an agent of the government, ever. I don't require this. I'm just going to send it back so there's no more confusion ever possible as to who I am now. You could do that.
I was going to ask, you mentioned there is a case that you have that gives reference to that statute's only applying to government or their agents.
Absolutely. R versus Big M Drug Mart Limited, 1985. And this is stuff that a friend sent me. Because he said, yeah, you're always talking about 32 and 52. Well, here's the case law. And I was like,
That's of the charter.
Yeah. Well, Section 52 is the Constitution, is part of the Constitution Act of Canada. So, Section 52 sets out the fundamental principle of constitutional law that the Constitution is supreme. The undoubted corollary to be drawn from this principle is that no one can be convicted of an offense under an unconstitutional law. Any accused, whether corporate or individual, may defend a criminal charge by arguing that the law under which the charge is brought is constitutionally invalid. And both the purpose and effects of legislation are relevant in assessing its constitutionality, and either an unconstitutional purpose or an unconstitutional effect can invalidate the legislation. A court not only has the power, but the duty to regard legislation found to be inconsistent with the Charter to the extent of the inconsistency as being no longer of force or effect. That's why I said earlier, they will pass laws that violate it. But that means they are of no force or effect. That doesn't mean they have to strike the law. It just means they can't actually prosecute you with it. They'll leave it on the law books, believe me, or they'll change names and they'll reword it a little bit. But so from there, then we go to R versus Dell. And R versus Dell. Now, this isn't part of the case law, or this isn't part of the decision. This is part of the writings of the book here, talking about number 32, and then I'll read the case law because it's only 2 lines long. The mere fact that an entity performs a public function, or that an activity may be described as public in nature, is not enough to bring it within government for Section 32 Charter purposes. For the Charter to apply to a private entity, not person, not man, not corporation, any kind of an entity. For the Charter to apply to a private entity, it must be found to be implementing a specific government policy or program. An entity may also be government not because of the nature of the entity, but because of the nature of the activity. So it doesn't matter who you are, you have to be, no matter what entity it is, it must be found implementing a specific function of government to be included in what they call government. R versus Dell, 2005. The Charter does not apply to interactions between private citizens except where the private citizen acts as an agent of the state or is performing a government function. You never need to leave those two pieces of case law, because 52 just said this Charter is supreme, and anything that is inconsistent with the Charter is of no force or effect. And they have the duty to make sure that they can't prosecute you with that at that point. Then we skip back to 32 right here, which just said the Charter does not apply to interactions between private citizens except for the private citizen acts as an agent of the state or is performing a function of government. If the Charter does not apply to interactions between the private individual, and it's the supreme law of Canada, how could any other law that they pass apply to the private citizen? Or a person, or an entity, a man, woman, anything. This is even just saying citizen. So even a citizen cannot have things done to it. That's the burden. Even that, and that's when we get into the Bill of Rights thing I think somebody was bringing up earlier. What about the Bill of Rights? Well, yeah, it still all applies, because they still can't do the things that they do against you even when you're that. But they're doing it over here to you as well. So you never need to go on, then that's pretty cut and dry. That's from the Supreme Court. Is there a way to interpret that in a way that government can say, no, I think we can still come into your home and take your kids? No. Absolutely not. So I don't need to go beyond that. That's it. So that's why I say I don't even get into any case law or statutes or anything in statutes, because once, if it's below these two things I just mentioned, then I don't care, because it does not apply, including definitions of words or anything. They have to prove I am implementing a specific government policy or program paid by the government, for the government. Can't get more clear than that, so I'm going to stop beating that into people's heads now.
Doesn't the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in itself say it belongs to Parliament?
Absolutely. And again, I talk about this in the videos. This is the Supreme Court sites that back up what I say. And I didn't even have those back then. I just, and actually another friend back in Manitoba put me onto that. We were reading through it, and he's like, and we're like, okay, well, 52 says it's the supreme law of Canada. And this charter is it. This is the supreme law of Canada. Clearly, it's what created Canada. That's its mandate. That's its will. It has to obey that. Hang on a sec. So when you read through it, and section 52 says that this is the supreme law of Canada, anything that is inconsistent with any provision of this act is of no force or effect. Now, let's get something straight. Does that mean the government is not going to pass laws that conflict with that? It doesn't say they can't pass laws that conflict with it. They say that whatever laws they do pass are of no force or effect because of that. But only if you mention that. They pass all sorts of shit. Pretty soon they're going to be, your toilet paper roll is going to be a bill.
It already is.
Yeah, it basically already is. Okay? Does that mean it has any force or effect? No, it exists, but it is inconsistent with the Charter. So even though they passed it, it has no force or effect whatsoever if it is inconsistent due to the inconsistency. That's in the Supreme Court ruling. That's 2.5 lines long. Okay? The other one that's 2.5 lines long is regarding section 32 of the Act. So you go backwards. This is supreme law. Anything that is inconsistent with anything in this is of no force or effect, even if passed and made an act. Then you go back to 32 and it says this charter only applies to the government. If the charter is the supreme law of Canada and nothing can be inconsistent with that law, and it only applies to the government, how can anything passed underneath it, how can any subordinate act ever apply to something that is not the government? It can't. It's of no force or effect. Which is just common sense to most of us. What do I give a shit about what they pass? How does that possibly compel performance from me in this title? Because they'll pass anything for this one. They have every right to. If I want to give somebody my car and tell them, yeah, you can use my car, but it's going to cost you $1 million up front and $1 million a kilometer. I am the idiot if I agree to use the car at that point. The choice is mine. We've always had a choice. We're never forced to do anything, ever. And you better believe they know this shit, because the last time I got arrested, it was, oh, sir, this, oh, sir, that. Would you please step out of the truck now after they smashed my window out? And I'm like, I never said I wouldn't get out. I'm just using their own shit against them, right? I like doing that. I said, you never asked me to get out. I said, not only that, I said I'd get out if you could provide one law that compels performance from me. I said, on the public, I'm just a private man driving around here doing my thing. Anyways, it doesn't matter. They got me out, and this is before I sent in the government a notice that I'm on to it now. I now know what you guys are doing. It took me a while, and I must look pretty stupid at times. I apologize for that. Forgive me. Okay? But I got it now. Now you guys know. But even back then, they were like, well, we're going to have to put handcuffs on you. Is that okay? Is that okay, sir? I said, well, if you're going to have to, I said, then you're going to put them on the front. And I said, make sure you do it really loose, because this is my concrete finishing hand. And they're like, oh, okay, is that too tight? Is that too tight, sir? I'm like, no, we're good, dude. Okay. And they're like, okay, could you please get in the car? And they're open. They're helping me get into the car and everything. And they're very cordial. They're very nice, very polite, even though they just smashed my window out. They didn't grab me and beat me this time. They did that 6 years ago, I think. But they know something is up. And they're starting to get more cautious now, because most people are starting to figure things out. Some of us have already figured it out, and we know how to go after recourse now. But either way, that's all the proof you're ever going to need is Section 32 and 52 of that Act. And here's why. What do I care about anything below that in any statute? It doesn't apply to me. And 32 and 52 state that, which is just common sense. If I'm in my kitchen table and I write up a new document, I authorize Dean to go into his neighbor's house and take his neighbor's TV. Sign it. Walk over to my neighbor's and ring his doorbell. Hey, I got this law says I can come into your living room and take your TV. Okay, well, no, it has no force or effect. But if he just goes, oh, shit. Oh, okay, well, it's over there. Well, that's consent. Did I steal from him? No. He just believed my bullshit. And I'm really good at bullshit. None of you are walking out of here without your wallets today. No. But that's it. And we know this stuff. It's just common sense. Clearly they can never pass a law that tells us we can't do something. We have rights. Rights cannot be taken. Privileges and benefits can be. So that tells you we're operating on something, that was our first clue back in the day. We all know something's not right because I already know it's a right, not a privilege. And they can't take my rights away. So that's exactly, again, I'm going to ad nauseum reiterate on this. They get you to act through a title that they can regulate, that is statutorily bound and must pay taxes to its creator. And they're the beneficiary of that.
I've heard that Canadian certificates used to have it some time ago. I studied a couple of them, didn't find it, but on British birth certificates, on the very bottom right side, it says this document is not personal identification.
Yeah, we get a letter with the birth certificate when it shows up here. This says the same thing.
Not on the new ones.
Yeah, they might not do it anymore, but they did. Right? Don't use it as ID. It's not personal ID.
Like
and it's not.
BC, they changed the format. It looks sort of like a plastic thingamajiggy.
Yeah.
It's not there.
I don't care what they change.
I know.
You know? Is the ability of me to enforce that law to take my neighbor's TV dependent on me making the document look fancier?
But my
No.
question is, what kind of, like, how valid are the other thingies they issue in the legal name, since the birth certificate is for them, oh, show me your birth certificate and we will issue you a driver's license.
Everything is valid. It's all valid. It's your choice to use it or not. Like I said, I can I can have a car, and I'll let every single one of you people here today use my car. I just need $1 million up front and $1 million a kilometer. Is that valid? Of course it's valid. It's my car, it's my rules. And if you don't like it, then don't use it. We were growing up, our dad told us all the time, this is my house. If you don't like my rules, get the out. And some of us leave. Yeah, I don't like those rules. That doesn't sound very good. I'm just going to leave.
So did you forfeit your, or you have no reason to?
You can't forfeit anything.
Or not forfeit, did you